It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Jen Cohen as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
And matching and dabbling in all kinds of different drugs.
Exactly.
So I guess what it is you've got one that's bringing you down, so you take another one that brings you up, and then what we hear is that the more you do, the more your body is resistant to it, so then you got to take more and more and more.
Exactly, and
so
it's chasing the high, and it's, what drug is available, and we hear about people having a drug of choice, but again, if one's not available and another is, there's more supply of that, they'll use that, and again, it's just chasing that high.
How'd this report come together? What was done?
It was an interesting process. It was back, actually, when you talk about heroin, in 2015 we were very concerned about what was happening with heroin in our county. We saw from arrest data and different things. I don't know if you've ever heard the statistic that the Yavapai County Jail say that they detox 3.5 people a day from heroin opioid addiction, which is amazing. So anyway, we knew that there was a significant problem, and we got together with about 60 key stakeholders in our county and thought, what can we do to address this problem? And we'd been working on the prescription drug problem for a long time, talking to medical providers, pharmacists, different, that's a little bit easier one to handle. But when you're talking about an illegal drug that's being promoted by, drug dealer in the black market, that's a lot more complicated. But at the time, when we were coming up with solutions specifically for the heroin problem, it was actually Detective James Tobin, who used to work for the Prescott Valley Police Department and now is with Yavapai College Police Department, had heard about an overdose fatality review board that was in the state of Maryland, and it was being done on a statewide basis. But he said, we should do that in Yavapai County and just get people together from all different organizations and really take a good hard look at the overdose deaths and see what we can learn. And our number one goal through this review is to actually reduce the number of overdose deaths.
What you were saying before the show started, and I was not aware of this either, Yavapai County is kind of black eye in the state of Arizona. I'm a little surprised to hear it too.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing to me. I've for 11 years have wondered, why is it that Yavapai County has higher drug use statistics in almost every single category. When we look at youth use, we find that our youth are using drugs and alcohol at higher rates than the state average. And again, when we look at overdose death rates, it's significantly higher than the state average. I heard a PANT officer, Partners Against Narcotic Trafficking officer, talk the other day saying that Yavapai County's rates are twice the national rates for overdose deaths. So it's a very interesting, statistics, and why is it that we are higher?
And that's just part of why we started this group and got them looking at this.
Exactly. Yeah. We wanted to take a closer look at the people that were dying and find out a lot more about them. What we do at the Overdose Fatality Review Board is that we get the medical examiner's report, we get the police report. When possible, we do a family interview, and that's where we can really gain some information, finding out about their treatment history, whether they were employed, whether whether they were homeless at the time of death, what was, their drug use, for years. Did they start when they were a young person? Was there a family history?
Right. Do you get to that point where you can find out what triggered it and kind of got it started?
We try. I mean, we try to gather as much information as possible, and putting all of that information together, we've learned some very valuable lessons.
I guess triggering it would be a really key thing. What got this ball rolling?
What makes somebody start using?
Yeah.
And I think so often, again, it's remember one reason that 9 of 10 people that are addicted to drugs and alcohol started as a teenager. Brain is just a very fragile thing, and that's why it's so important that people don't start using drugs and alcohol when they are young, because again, it's going to lead to poor choices that are going to lead to other poor choices. And you talk about triggering something, when their brain is impaired with either marijuana or alcohol, you never know what other drug that it could lead to that they otherwise would not make that choice in their right mind that wasn't impaired.
Sure. So this study looked at 9 deaths in Yavapai County. 3 of the deaths were from Prescott, 2 from Cottonwood, 2 Prescott Valley, 1 in Mayer, 1 in Black Canyon City. This report is available numbers for themselves. 4 were female, 5 were male.
Yes.
And this has been going on, this look has been going on for about 15 months, a little more now because the report's been out for about a month now, but.
Yes. We, it took us a while to get, we had to get our processes in place, but as of January 2016 is when we started looking at the deaths. And again, it's not all of the deaths, of course, I want to make sure that that's clear to everyone. I mentioned that there were 80 drug-related deaths. Of those 80 deaths, 46 were unintentional overdose deaths. So that's what we were primarily focusing on. And with these 9 deaths, we wanted to look at, you mentioned the geographic areas. We wanted to make sure that we were looking at deaths in different areas, but we also wanted to look at different causes of death. And that's how we chose these specific 9 deaths.
What was similar about these folks?
The number one thing that's a very important question, because one of the things that was a goal of ours was to identify commonalities. And the number one commonality that we identified was mental health issues. In fact, in 8 of the 9 deaths, they had a reported mental illness. And if we looked a little bit further, when we were able to access treatment data, we found that in 4 of the 9 deaths, they actually had a diagnosis of a severe mental illness. And so, I think that it's really interesting when you look at mental illness and substance abuse, and people talk a lot about which came first, it's the chicken or the egg.
Right, yeah, I would have that question for you too.
Right,
yeah.
And what the answer is? It's both.
Okay.
There are times where people have, they struggle with depression and anxiety, and they use those substances to try to deal with that mental illness. And then there's cases where people use drugs and it leads to mental illness. And so that's what we found. But again, when you ask about commonalities, I think that was the number one thing that we identified. There were other commonalities that we identified. One of the things that we realized is that in 5 of the 9 cases, these people had been involved with law enforcement, had been on probation or parole, had spent time in jail, so had been down that path. We also found that a majority had been in treatment at some point. 7 of the 9 had been in outpatient treatment. 5 of the 9 had actually been in inpatient treatment, and 2 of the 9 had actually been involved with medication-assisted treatment.
Wow.
So that was interesting for us to identify. When we looked at their lifestyle, 7 of the 9 were homeless, which I don't think is a surprise. The other 2 that weren't homeless were actually younger people that lived with their parents. Unemployed, 8 of the 9 were unemployed.
Sounds like that's kind of a reaction to mental illness and the drugs combined right there. It's just, you hear about that, and so where's your rock bottom at? And
exactly.
So they're homeless.
Exactly. Another really interesting commonality that we identified is that 3 of the 9 had a significant other who had died of an overdose previous to their death.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and in 2 of those cases, they actually had children together. So these children now have, both of their parents, their mom and dad, that are both dead from overdose deaths.
Wow. We got to take our first break, okay? Again, go to MATForce.org if you want to look at the report, MATForce.org. There's some alarming numbers in here, and you gave me some even that I don't think are even on this report, just other numbers you've come up with since then. MATForce Executive Director Merilee Fowler in studio today. Stick around, Countywide back in just a couple minutes.
Listen to me. I am captain of the track team. And if I'm late,
she doesn't really think she's going to get out of here, does she?
Be nice. She's new.
Hello, is anyone there? Ugh!
Wow. Even from our standards, you look awful.
Oh, sweetie, what happened?
Me? My friend Becky got to talk to this super cute boy, and I tried to act like I wasn't jealous, but I so totally was. And then out of nowhere, this concrete barrier just popped up. Maybe it was a semi.
You mean you were driving?
Yeah. I mean, I know the whole eyes on the road thing, but this was a super important text. Maybe you have to know, Becky.
Texting? Great.
But it was only like 5 seconds, and I'm a really, really fast texter, so it wasn't even a big deal. Actually, has she texted me back yet? Wow, I get like no bars in this place. I wonder if they have Wi-Fi here.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing.
Deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually
Health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit Cottonwood Cares.
Yo, what's going on? This is Trizzy Drake.
Ariana Grande.
Maroon 5.
This is Rihanna.
I'm Shawn Mendes. Hey, it's Bruno Mars. Ed Sheeran. What's up, guys? It's Justin Bieber. You're listening to The Weeknd.
Start 10 songs in a row during your ride home with Julie Page.
Zach Sang Show.
Good night. And Kelly Fox. Weekends on your home for hit music. The Q102.
Why Merilee Fowler, Executive Director of MATForce, in studio today. The website is MATForce. Nothing new to me. It came in, I want to say, we were talking before show last year. The Yavapai County Sheriff's Office made a traffic stop and they found 14 to 15 pounds of this white powder in packages in the vehicle. And I remember talking to Dwight about that, and one of the cuts I used from him was just how dangerous fentanyl is. And had that officer, because they usually field test these drugs out in the field.
Right.
And they were cutting these bags open and testing it, and it came back with fentanyl. And they're like, ooh. And so if this stuff would have kicked up, blown in their faces, got on their skin, I mean, it literally goes right through your skin.
Right through your skin. And they say that, you know, it
could kill you quickly.
A salt grain, you know, a fentanyl the size of a grain of salt could kill you. And you know, it's really interesting too, Paul, when you talk about fentanyl, because that was one of the first things that we identified through the Overdose Fatality Review Board. Because when you talk about an officer going out on a scene, and this was with a drug bust, you know, your example with fentanyl, but even when it's an overdose death, they don't know what they're going to encounter.
What's in there?
Right.
Right.
And you know, the thing with when somebody dies of an overdose death, the toxicology report from the medical examiner doesn't come back for, you know, a couple months. And so we identified that 2 people that had died in our county had actually died of fentanyl. But the officers were so surprised because they had no idea. There was no indication of any fentanyl that was on the scene. And what we identified is the new trend now is counterfeit fentanyl. It's pills that looks like OxyContin. I mean, it's manufactured in China.
A fake fentanyl.
It's a fake fentanyl, and it's coming in massive quantities. You know, you mentioned the one bust with the 14 pounds. There was another bust that was done in Prescott Valley just in October, the end of October, with 162 fentanyl pills, and again, they were these counterfeit pills. Oh, wow. So you think about these being out there in our county for people, you know, not thinking maybe they're taking an OxyContin, you know, even if they, you know, got this from somebody illegally and they have an addiction, but then they don't realize that they're taking this fentanyl pill, and the chance of them dying is so much more greater because of this terribly potent drug that is out there.
I don't suppose it says fentanyl on it.
No, it doesn't say fentanyl.
It has no label at all on it, does it?
Exactly.
So you're just taking something you have no idea what it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we believe that the 2 deaths that we look at, that where the medical examiner said that they died from fentanyl intoxication, we believe that they did not know they were taking fentanyl.
Oof.
So it's a very scary drug that's out there.
And you
right
said
now.
It's been showing up on marijuana as well?
Well, you know, that's in Tennessee, yes. In Tennessee, there was a report that was a news report that came out that they were lacing marijuana with fentanyl.
Okay.
We haven't identified that here in Yavapai County, but you know, people just need to be really aware of what's happening. And you know, we were talking earlier about why is it that drug dealers are lacing this stuff with this more potent drug? And you know, again, it's chasing that high, and they realize that people are going to get a more intense high, and that's what they're striving for. So you know, we believe that that's the reason why, you know, people in the illegal drug trade are putting fentanyl in things. And
so these are accidental overdoses. These 9 cases, were they intentional suicidal overdoses?
They're all accidental overdoses.
All accidental.
Yes, that's what we're looking at. You know, we're looking at the cases where, you know, that somebody who was, you know, not planning to end their life, but here they are unintentionally dead from their drug use, and that's what we.
Some people would say, well, that's the roll of the dice. It just might happen.
Well, exactly.
But
I'm sure, it's such a sad thing, and having worked for MATForce for the last 11 years and talking to a lot of family members who lose their young one, loved ones, and they're not, nobody wakes up and thinks, hey, you know what, I think I'm going to start, abusing these drugs, and 20 years down the road or 10 years down the road, I'm going to die from this drug. Nobody wakes up and thinks that. This is all, right. Getting in a path where it takes over their life, it takes over their decisions, everything that's happening to them. And I know that with these 9 that we looked at, none of them planned on being dead. That definitely wasn't the case. So.
There's something else I think we should make clear too, is that, a lot of folks, when you say there's a drug problem in Yavapai County, they're going to think, well, that's because the young people don't have enough to do and stuff like that. But your report is showing that it's not the young people. I mean, it can start that way, right. And we don't want it to start that way, and that's why we do these shows, is to try to tell parents, hey, go in there and, spy a little bit. They're your kids, it's your house, so spy a little bit and see what they're doing and what they're involved in. But it's my age group that's having a big problem.
Right. It's really interesting when you look at the 80 deaths, and we actually have a separate report that we are going to be putting up on our website that talks more about the 80 deaths. But the highest category of deaths is the 45 to 54-year-olds. There were 22 people in that age category that died from drug-related deaths. And when we looked at the overdose deaths, the age range that we went with the 9 deaths was from 20 to 53. And so you're exactly right. This is not something that is just a problem for young people.
It's not a teenager thing.
No, it affects all ages, but more predominantly it is in that 45 to 54-year-old age range.
Did we find out anything why it's like that, and what's going on?
That is such a great question, and I don't think that we really identified it from our research so far. But you just wonder, is it that people at that age, their tolerance to the drug is a lot higher because they've been using for years, and then they're at more risk. I think a lot of times there's health factors that come into play too.
Okay,
because,
heart maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
That was one of the things that was really interesting too. When we were looking at commonalities, we identified that 5 of the 9 had significant health problems, outside of just what we would think from drug use, received a prescription drug, an opioid, with medical care in a lot of cases, which is interesting. You wouldn't necessarily think that was happening. So it's a great question. I don't think I have the answer, but why is it that 45 to 54-year-old age range was the highest?
That's always the big question, isn't it? Why. It's always the big question.
Right.
Yeah, we got to take our next break already.
Okay.
I know, it's going by so fast, huh? MATForce.org is the website. All the stuff we're talking about is on there right now. MATForce Executive Director Merilee Fowler in studio today. Stick around, Countywide back in just a couple minutes.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
The Q102.9 plays all the hits.
Yo, what's going on? This is Drizzy Drake.
Ariana Grande.
Maroon 5.
This is Rihanna.
I'm Shawn Mendes. Hey, it's Bruno Mars. Ed Sheeran. What's up, guys? It's Justin Bieber. You're listening to The Weekend.
Start your day with during your ride home with Julie Page.
Zach Sang Show.
Catch the Zach Sang Show weeknights 7 to midnight. And Kelly Fox weekends on your home for hit music. The Q102.9 and 104.9 in Prescott and Cottonwood.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.com.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got just a couple minutes left of the program. Merilee Fowler from MATForce is in studio today. We're talking about the Drug Overdose Fatality Review Board and what they learned in the last 15 months of studying these 9 accidental overdose cases in Yavapai County. Now that we know this part is over with, we've got the implementation stage of this. So how is that going to work?
Well, through the review of the 9 cases, we came up with 31 recommendations, and they're in 4 categories. One category is for law enforcement and judiciary, one is for substance abuse and mental health treatment, one is for the medical community, and one category is for prevention. And so with these 31 recommendations, we didn't want to just come up with these recommendations and walk away. We wanted to be able to implement them. And so we have scheduled a time for anyone in the community that's interested in being a part of the solution to come together, and we're going to break up into these 4 categories and actually come up with the action steps that we need to take to make it a reality and make these recommendations happen.
Okay, and that's going to be on Friday, January 5th, 9 a.m. at the Step 1 building in Prescott Valley, and that's on East 2nd Street.
Yes.
Okay.
And we are asking if anyone is interested to please call the office, and but our number is 928-708-0100. So I'd like to come and help us to implement the action steps for these recommendations.
And that's 928-708-1000?
0100.
010. That's what I've got written down here, but I like to flip numbers around in my head. It's a lot of fun for me. Okay, so 928-708-0100. And that's on January 5th, Friday. That's a Friday at 9 a.m.
Yes.
Step 1 building in Prescott Valley on East 2nd Street. Okay, so yeah, I guess the goal is to number 1, stop these accidental overdoses, find out why they're happening, and then we got to get rid of the dealers.
That's true.
I mean, it's a major fight, though, and it's been going on for so long. Some people say it can't even be done. There's just, you're never going to stop it.
I believe that we can just keep doing everything that we can think of to be a part of the solution. It's a dark topic. There's times I go and talk to groups and I think, man, I'm the most depressing person ever to listen to, but I have to look on the bright side. And that's why the number 1 goal again of MATForce is prevention, because if we can stop people from ever starting to use drugs and alcohol, we're not going to have to be talking about this problem of overdose deaths. And that is definitely our goal. And we want to protect our kids and make sure that they have a life and are able to achieve their dreams, and it doesn't include starting to use these drugs.
That seems to be, that's where the major focus has to be too, is we've got the folks that are hooked. I mean, we want them, of course, to get off this and get better, but it's stopping these ones from even starting or trying it out. And once we stop that, then we can take care of the rest. It'll just eventually not be there anymore.
Exactly. We say it's the 3-legged stool. Yeah, prevention, law enforcement, and treatment, to solve this problem.
Okay, alrighty. And then once we get this, get that kind of taken care of and put together.
I'm hoping that in January we can get a great strategic plan together and that we can implement them in that upcoming year. I don't know if that's a lofty goal or not, but that would be what we would strive to do. And we're going to continue to look at overdose deaths too. The Overdose Fatality Review Board is going to continue to look at the deaths that were seen in 2017, because again, the thing that's really important is identifying those trends, like the fentanyl. That was the perfect example. We were able to identify that early on the ground that was happening in our county, so that law enforcement could take the steps to protect themselves. And that's what we need to be doing to continue to do, and look at these deaths and see what we're going to learn, and then continue to implement the solutions.
Awesome.
So.
Merry Christmas, Merilee.
Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year.
Thank you so much.
Let us know how things are going. I'll contact you, and we'll talk more about this after we get the implementation meeting taken care of.
That would be
a
great.
Good idea.
Thank you so much.
Website is matforce.org. That's today's Countywide. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.